Tee Higgins out of Clemson, who was a basketball standout in high school, and that skill set and ability to box out certainly, I believe, shows up on the field for him. Interesting side note about this guy, too. He skipped the on-field workouts at the NFL Combine because he was obviously in the Natty, so against LSU, and so he felt like he didn't have enough time to physically recover and practice appropriately, train appropriately for the Combine. So he was, however, one of the few teams that I believe was able to perform at Clemson's Pro Day, which was like in early March before everything really went sideways.
Correct.
And he did run a 4.54 40-yard dash inside the Tigers practice facility. It was March 12th, actually. So we do have a 40 time on him. He did sneak in. I'm kind of surprised. I feel like that was a low 40 time. He definitely plays faster on tape than that time to me would convey.
Yeah, and especially when you consider that scouts around the NFL feel that Clemson's 40-yard dash is maybe closer to a 39.2-yard dash. There have been rumors for years that maybe their times are a little off. So that even makes it maybe even more of a strange case. But yeah, he's a fluid runner. I mean, he's a smooth guy. I mean, I like the way he moves for a almost 6'4", 220-pound guy. But to me, the trait that stood out the most for him watching him was the length. And that was my one word was, watching him go up in the air, kind of like we saw with Mike Williams in college and also with the Chargers now in the NFL, just his ability to high point, and they would throw up those 50-50 balls that really were 80-20 because he had the ability to box out and just go rebound the ball. Like you said, Mr. Basketball in Tennessee growing up. He was a special athlete in high school, but I love that ability for him. And I think it translates, even if the speed is questioned on some level.
I think you're right. And my word was not, you wrote long, I wrote stretch. So it's the same thing, the ability to high point, the ability to, we were just talking about the Panthers and I'm thinking about Cam Newton, who obviously isn't with them anymore, but the ability to have a skyscraper help out a quarterback who is at times a little high and wild, right? That's what this kid Higgins can do. Also, he's got legs for days. My goodness. Just watching him, he gallops down the field, and maybe that's a mirage and what makes him look so much faster than he may or may not be. But I agree with you. There is a little bit of a trouble with his route tree. It was a bit limited, and he does seem to struggle in short to intermediate situations. So I think this is going to have to be a rapport-dependent producer, especially if you're trying to, project from a fantasy perspective.
Right, and there may be a little bit of a learning curve too, because he was just more physically blessed than a lot of the DBs he faced, and yet there were some times when he faced up against some of the stronger corners in college football, and you could see, he wasn't as easily able to box those guys out and gain position and things like that. And he couldn't burn past certain guys. So, as gifted as he is, I still think he could probably use a year in an NFL strength and training program and kind of work on the speed and the quickness, sharpen up that route running ability and also get a little stronger. I mean, that was the one thing that he was just sort of more of that pogo stick out there who could make those kind of plays. And now I think, it's going to rely on him being a little more technically precise. But you're right. It's when you have an 81-inch wingspan the way he does and readjusting to the ball the way he did. I mean, that alone is going to serve him very well if
a lot of patience
right there. Yeah.
Right? I feel like the patience in ball tracking, he doesn't seem to fidget. He's very calm and then does manage to climb the ladder. So, or doesn't even need to climb it, really. He just is the ladder. So we talked about the struggles in short to intermediate passing, but you and I both found stats that exemplified his ability to excel as a red zone weapon. Why don't you give yours first?
Yeah, 27 touchdowns, tied the career lead with, the school lead, rather, program high with DeAndre Hopkins, Sammy Watkins. I mean, look, different eras, different quarterbacks, the whole bit. I mean, it's not exactly a apples to apples comparison, but it shows that, Clemson has produced some incredible wide receiver talent over the years. And, there is some real translation from college to the pros, whereas we were a little bit suspicious at one point about, how those kind of athletes made it to the NFL and thrive. We don't have those questions anymore. I'm not saying every wide receiver from Clemson comes in ready-made, but I do believe that, he packed in as much experience in 3 years as possible. And, from a physical standpoint, all the things we just mentioned is ready to go. And especially in the red zone, I think that's really where he's going to end up being a valuable target. So, Liz, he could have a rookie year where he catches 45 balls, but 7 or 8 of them could be touchdowns. So, that makes him fantasy relevant right there.
I agree. My need to know stat is that he scored a touchdown on 20% of his catches at Clemson, which is bananas. And just to throw in, we're talking about touchdowns. You talked about touchdowns. He also averaged 12.82 yards per target in 2019, which was wide receiver 4 among receivers in 2019. And that to me also exemplifies that he is such an awesome downfield weapon, and that is how we should, to translate it further, anticipate him being used at the next level.
Absolutely, no question about it. And that was the thing with my comp. I wanted it, I wanted to sort of get it. We've talked about this in the past 2, editions here, where finding the right comp is important. Style-wise, I kind of like my comp, but I also have to sort of clarify in the sense that I'm not calling him AJ Green. But I'm saying he can win in some of the same ways that AJ Green does. Actually, he plays similar to Mike Williams, who I mentioned earlier. But so I'm going to call him AJ Green light. Green got those vertical routes. He won in the air, all those different things. I just don't think Higgins is as quick, precise, or fast, or quite as reliable as Green was. So I'm not talking about a top 5 prospect here. I know he's going in the second round, but style-wise, there's some similarities there. So that's sort of what I came up with as a downfield weapon.
And I think that's a great comp for ceiling too, right? Like this is where this guy can get to. And I think sometimes we like my comp is probably the like right now comp. I comped him to Preston Williams, who flashed and broke out for the Dolphins. A lot of people compared him to Devontae Parker, but I actually felt like Williams was more apt to where he is right now. I agree with you that he can get to AJ Green, but for right now, I just kept seeing. And by the way, you play too much fantasy when you're like, oh, this guy's Preston Williams. This is definitely the first word that like the name I'm putting down. He's Williams and Higgins are the same height. Williams is about 5 pounds less than Tee Higgins. Their measurables are similar. I just think when you're looking right now, there's going to be some rawness. But I love what you said earlier. He may only catch 45 balls, but 7 of them are going to be in the red zone, and he's going to bring them down. And he is going to be like one of those if he can stay healthy, one of those post-hype sleepers for the next 2021 season.
Yeah. I mean, he's still young. He's 21 years old, doesn't turn 22, I don't think, till the end of the year. 3 years removed from high school. Played a lot of high-level football, though. And if you don't thrust him into a role where he's expected to be a volume guy year one, or he's expected to be the number 1 target, I don't want him to go to a place where he's the only guy. You know what I mean? Like the most wide receiver starved team. I want a team to pick him because he's a damn good player and he's still on the board and we've got a pick coming up. You know what I mean? So that's kind of what I was thinking a little bit. Who did you have for your comp, though? I mean, what are you thinking as far as a placement for, not a comp, but I mean a team fit, rather?
A landing spot?
Yeah.
So I initially thought Houston was going to be a great place to go. But then, B.O.B. did his thing, and now it's Brandon Cook. So I don't think that the need for a receiver, I don't think that the Texans are going to draft a receiver that high. So I am a little bit stumped. I decided to go with the Colts.
I can see it.
You've got T.Y. aging a bit, and sure, Paris Campbell is still a thing, but how many times are we going to run it back to Dontrell Inman? How many times we got to do this? So I think that if you need a guy who can high point, especially if you're looking at so many times last season, Phillip Rivers, admittedly behind a much worse offensive line, but definitely wrote checks his body couldn't cash. And so I think now if you have this kid who can high point, he can save Rivers a little bit here. Rivers just needs to heave it up. He doesn't need to be as precise. And you saw him do it with Williams, as you mentioned. So maybe that's the fit in this window that the Colts are trying to procure for themselves.
And hey, who was Philip Rivers, getting bailed out by? Mike Williams, right? Yeah. So it all comes full circle. I like your pick. It's even better than mine, to be totally honest. This one is a little bit of a kind of a cute backstory thing. I mean, even though Higgins grew up in Tennessee, he was a Bengals fan, which I think, we got to give him mention for that. Because if you're a Bengals fan and proudly tout it, God bless you, right? Good for you. No shame there. So, I'm sort of thinking, is the first pick of the second round too early? Who knows? But I'd like to see them plan for life after A.J. Green. And who was Higgins' favorite receiver to model his game after growing up? It was him. So having a year with Green as his mentor, remember, they kept him around. They knew it was important to convince Joe Burrow, we're trying to build something here. We're going to spend in free agency. We're going to franchise A.J. Green. I think it would be a nice way to kind of hand off, and just watching A.J. Green run routes and do his craft every single day, be re-energized by having Burrow there. All the weapons they're starting to put together there. It wouldn't be too bad to plan for the next phase of their franchise.
I'm
by getting his eventual replacement. Yeah, no, I had to build a little bit. Yeah, it was simmering.
You did, but also, what better way for Higgins to maybe heal some of those wounds of a lost national championship than with Joe Burrow, the quarterback that bested his squad?
Kumbaya, you know what I mean? Bring it home, have some love fests, build that bond, right? And I mean, Burrow, had two of the more talented receivers in college football last year. It would be nice to get him a young guy of this sort of makeup who could help him with the downfield stuff.